Hello and welcome to Reduce CO2 Now. This is a presentation about system thinking. And it's applied to planet Earth as a system. And we are looking especially at global warming and climate change. So, what is systems thinking anyway? Well, system thinking comes from a belief that the whole is more than the sum of parts. A lot of times we try to bring something down to all the individual parts, processes, and so on. In system thinking, we try to go really from the outside in. And a system, it's really you can define anything as a system. It's really simple. You can have like a family as a system, a person. You can have an organization, a company. And of course, you can also have the whole world defined as a system. And a system doesn't exist in completely alone. There is always an environment. Even for planet Earth, the planet is living in an environment of space and the sun. So it's always part of a bigger thing. And how we do system thinking is we say there's some inputs and there's some outputs. And then there's also feedback loops. The outputs are going back in and so on. And there's the system, the stuff inside. But this boundary is, it's like a membrane. It's permeable. There's things going through. So we have a system, you have inputs and we have outputs. And we have an environment. So, and there are some, let's say, core beliefs for system thinking that a system is a group of interconnected parts that influence each other. That's maybe you have heard of the butterfly effect. The butterfly is flying in one area. It's influencing the system in a total different area. And the behavior of the whole comes from the interaction of all these parts, especially if you think of humans and communication and technology going to be playing a part here. And there's also the belief that changing one part often affects a lot of other things. And, a system thinker is not trying to force a system to do something. The system thinker is thinking about where can I make a small change, a small interaction, do a small thing, and then suddenly the behavior of the whole thing is going a different direction. That's how system thinking works. And to solve complex problems, we must understand the whole system in some way. Okay? So let's have a look on how this is actually done in practice. So here we come to one of really the core principles of system thinking. And that might be counterintuitive. That's why we have here a whole slide. One of the core things in system, it's basically defining the whole thing, is that the system thinker is defining each system to be perfect. Every system produces exactly what it is designed to produce. And you might now think, hey, my company is not producing what I want, or my family, or my relationship, or whatever. Yourself, you're maybe not producing what you really want to have as desirable outcomes. But this is really the core here of the thing. That's why system thinking brings you to totally different kind of approaches. It's really you say, it's just some really core belief, or it's really the foundation of the whole thing. Each system is perfectly designed for what it's producing. Results are not accidents. Outputs come from the structure of the system. If you don't like the results, the system is still perfectly there to produce your outputs. If you are producing cars and you have a lot of quality issues, your system is perfectly designed to produce these quality issues. So if you don't like something, the system you have is perfectly designed to produce that stuff. So the system thinker then asks, how can I influence a system that I have more desirable results and less undesirable results? So improving results usually requires to change something in the system and not blame anybody in there. They usually have some sort of incentives or so on to actually produce what you get as outcomes. In system thinking, we look at the outputs. We really try to be totally really not prejudiced at all. We just look at the outputs, we see what is there, and then we say, okay, the system we have right now is perfectly designed to produce these outputs. Let's have a look where that is coming from. So you go backwards. You don't go with the inputs first. You go with the output and see, oh, that's the output. There's a certain amount of emission and so on, or there's like a certain amount of money spent. And what is really the output? How many products are there? What is the quality? What is the time? Whatever, So you go from the outputs and then you look, what is the system designed to produce that? And you always say the system is perfect. You just want to find out what really the system is. And when we talk about a system, we usually talk about an open, social, technical, economic system. Even you yourself, you're an open, social, technical, economic system. If you're in a relationship, you may be married, you have a relationship, that's an open, social, technical, economic system. You are the larger family, that's the same. A company, it's an open, social, technical, economic system because there's always humans involved, social, tech. Usually there's some sort of technology involved. You have a smartphone, so you have technology. Even if the technology is really simple, you have technology. And then there's usually some sort of economic aspects, money and so on. One famous model is called OSTO. What I have used in the past very much. This is not, the diagram is not showing the OSTO model. There's a link here on Wikipedia. You can look that up. But it's basically telling you, okay, we have input human capital, humans, going into, people, information, energy, material, resources, and so on. It's all kinds of stuff, is going into the system. Yeah. Then you have, the social system, and there are all the people and their culture, their processes, very good, big thing nowadays, all kinds of processes, rules, and so on. You have the economic system, money coming in. You have the technical system, when you produce something. That might be computers, that might be any kind of machinery with technology and processes. All that stuff is interacting. And again, you have a legal framework, you have an open system boundary, and so on. And there's on the other side, then your outputs. And your outputs are again influencing the inputs and the system itself. One big part of the OSTO system or OSTO model is that you have several feedback loops, and an organization might have a mission, an aim, a bigger context where it's embedded. And all these things also have feedback loops. Yeah? And the output can be performance, employee satisfaction, innovation, customer value, profit, all kinds of outputs be there, but also maybe waste or CO2 produced and all these kind of things. Yeah? So that's they are system models, how to analyze these things much more in detail. We're not going to all these details for this presentation. What we are going to do here is we are taking now on the whole world, the whole planet, as our system. Huh? So we just go and widen our view that we look at on the whole world. And again, we have this thing that we say, okay, the whole world as we live in today is perfectly designed with all the people, all the technology, all the stuff. It's perfectly designed, all the process and everything is perfectly designed to produce the outputs we produce. So what is the output? But let's have a look. There are some things which are quite obvious. It's we have a growing world population, something like 8 billion or so and rising. Yeah? So an incredibly fast growing population around the world. Then we have increasing living standards in at least some parts of the world. I live in Germany, and the living standard here is not much better than I think in the 1940s. Yeah? Part of it especially being in the Second World War, but living standards are increasing in some parts of the world. We have increasing CO2 emissions, we have increasing CO2 levels on the whole planet, and we have increasing global temperature. So that are some of our core outcomes, and we are going to have a look at those now. So first, we will look at what is the bottom line. It's a little bit similar here to, a lot of times people in companies are trying to reduce the cost. In the end, they end up with more expense and less profit. If you really want to go to the bottom line and the output of what we are doing as a system to this planet, and we look at the whole planet, we just have to look at one core measurement, and that is how much CO2 is in the atmosphere. There are other greenhouse gases as well, but we are taking now CO2 here as the primary factor. And you see here, this curve shows CO2 increase since the 1960s. There's more data available, but this is just highlighting from the 1960s onwards. We might have had something like a safe level still in the 1960s, but it's going up all the time. And there's a straight line there to comparison. It's going up and the rate is increasing. So the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is going up and that is going ever faster. So we are having obviously a system which is producing ever higher numbers of CO2 in the atmosphere, and the rate of increase is also increasing. So we have an output of the whole system, of the whole world. And one of the outputs is how many CO2 are we producing? How many CO2 emissions are there from fossil fuels? You see this in this curve. This curve goes here from the 1940s to today. And again, there's a dashed line, which is a straight line. And you can see from the 1950s or so onwards, it's basically a linear trend. You can really very much approximate it with linear. It's there are some fluctuations, of course, but you will see, okay, it's just going up all the time. So we have a system which is producing more and more fossil fuel emissions. Record number here, 38.1 billion tons in 2025. And, it's just going up. And this is a perfect explanation for what you have seen in the slide before. We pump more CO2 in the air, and the CO2 concentration is going up. So that's a quite straightforward thing. So we have a system which is producing ever more CO2 all the time. Basically, it's going up linearly. So, and again, now the last output we are looking at is global temperature. Hey, of course, it's not so simple to measure the global temperature in one single place. You have to use models and have lots of measurements coming together. But you see there's 8 different models here, and they are basically giving out the same kind of results. And you see from the 1960s onwards, the global temperature is rising. And just remember, we left safe levels sort of in the 1960s. So since then, it's going up, and you could argue that also the increase is going up faster in recent time. But at least it's a straight line going up there since the 1960s. And of course, there's global temperature fluctuations. It's going up and down to other factors. But hey, we have a system where the global temperature is rising really, really fast. So now we know the outputs of our system. So our whole world, we look at this, the whole world globally system. The output is higher temperatures, more CO2 emissions, temperature is rising, and more CO2 in the atmosphere. That's the output of our system. The input to the system is coal, oil, and gas, all the fossil fuels. It's also a feedback loop here because, there's economic growth, there are more people. They also want to have more higher living standard. They want to consume things and so on. Huh? So that's the whole world is. It's a system to suck up energy, cheap energy from fossil fuels. And by the way, it's almost unlimited amount of that stuff available. So that can go on to really absolutely dangerous levels. So we have a system which is taking in fossil fuels, burning them for the rise of economy and ever more people. By the way, there's billions of people around the planet who don't have a living standard like the United States or Europe in general have. So there's like billions of people just waiting to have the same living standards as others. So, and then we have like, what does it tell us now? The world system is designed to burn fossil fuels at an ever increasing rate. Okay. That's like, we have a system that's designed to do that. And if you don't change the system design in some credible way, the system is going on to behave in the same way in the future. Then we have like, we can do some observations already. We have politicians who are talking about climate change before like 25 years already. We have climate conferences since 1995, but putting effective measures in place has obviously not happened. We have a system which is always getting more and more in. It's all rising, but we are talking about doing something differently for 25 years, since 1995, on UN conferences. So the CO2 emissions have been increasing dramatically. I just like nearly double in that time is not correct. It's like 66% or so. I just made another presentation where I had like the exact figures. But you see, we're just talking, nothing really happened. It's just getting worse. So if you're looking at the system thinker, you know that the people who are in charge are not interested actually in changing the system. No. If you would see a turnaround, you would say, hey, the system is time to turn around. But as a system thinker, you know that in the summary, the people who are actually in charge are not at all interested in changing something. And if you understand politics as a system, yeah, what is like the most important job of a politician? To get re-elected, not maybe himself, like President Trump, for example, can't get re-elected, at least as much as we know it, as a US president. But of course, he wants to have his party, I think, re-elected. Or that's like usually with all kinds of political parties in democracies that you want to get re-elected. And if you like push anything which is drastic and might be unpopular, like, hey, we just like increase fossil fuel prices. We increase or double the price of gas. That would be one effective measure. It's deeply unpopular with most people. So you might not get re-elected again. So the political system is, of course, part of the global system. And it's producing these results. We have another presentation, especially designed around politics and what they do to actually avoid putting in re-election. So just imagine for a second that the world leaders actually would like to do something about climate change. Just imagine that the world leaders really want to do something about climate change. What would be the solution? Well, actually, that solution is dramatically simple. What would a system thinker do? Well, we have all these fossil fuel producing countries, especially like oil, yeah, and coal and gas. And the only thing you need is that these countries agree to reduce fossil fuel extraction by a certain percentage per year and make a plan over like 35 years to reduce the current fossil fuel output from currently roughly 40 billion tons to something like 3 to 5 billion tons in the year in 35 years. I don't think personally that we can ever go to something like no fossil fuel extraction. We still want to have something like this because there are some applications which are valuable, like, flying aircraft, which probably use fuels. We might have synthesized them or something like this, but like, hey, some sort of fossil fuel use might be okay when we at the same time also prepare and set up a system to get the CO2 out of the air again. Like carbon sequestration, reforestation. So they just look at all the, we have like some of these parts available, what the solution would be. So not using fossil fuels at all, I don't think that's really a long-term solution with the technology we have today. But hey, it could be reduced over a time frame of like, say, 35 years to practically net zero. But how likely is that actually going to happen? By the way, the fuel prices would be going up, so the people who are extracting fossil fuels would still make a lot of money because, yeah, you still have to pump it out of the ground and you can sell it, and the prices would go through the roof. But making such a plan would give the whole world enough time to go from fossil fuels today to alternative energies in the future. So everybody would be knowing that, hey, this year we had like 40 billion tons. Next year we are just doing 39 billion tons, and it's going down. So you could even like somehow predict how much the fuel prices are going up in the future because everybody is agreeing to not produce so much anymore. The only problem, of course, is how do we get the world leaders to agree on anything? So that's why our project is not really focusing on, doing something about politics. There was like this Friday for Future campaign and these kind of things where people with protests and so on try to influence public opinion. But like public opinion on this matter is largely like at least indifferent. Nobody really cares much about climate change. And most people are just like not knowing how much and how big these impacts are going to be. But using system thinking, we came up with like 4 areas of how to do something in that matter. One is to increase the prices of fossil fuels. That sounds counterproductive in like most discussions, because like everybody wants to have low fuel prices. But if you really want to do something, you have to find ways how to increase the fuel prices on the whole world. If like Europe is driving electric cars, the fuel gets burned all over the world anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So increasing fossil fuel prices on a global scale, one thing. Second thing is return carbon to the ground, not with technology really, but with low tech. It's done with biomass, how to bury biomass, put it back in the ground. So we have to put carbon back into the ground. Reforesting the planet, one big thing. We have like cut down lots and lots of trees. We have to like reforest the planet using big technology and stuff we have. And fourth is like if the whole world would be eating a different diet, much less meat and so on, much more plant-based, that would be optimal for the planet. We could replant and reforest even greater parts of the world. That's like the core 4 levers. So if you understood that we are doing things a little bit differently than other people, then very welcome. Thank you very much for watching so far. Please join us. Join us on Discord. Come to an online meeting. We welcome quickly everybody. We can use all kinds of expertise. We use Discord as our main platform for project management, communication, and so on. You'll find here some links all in the description. Join an event. There's an event section on Discord. Then go to a recurring meeting. These are video conferences. Introduce yourself and hey, let's discuss your participation. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, and of course, tell this to other people. And of course, hey, let's work together to turn climate change around.